you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
Don't be a smartass.
Either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
You're really quite something. You are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite
Stop
nothing.
this for a second.
Right, you're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him. Hello there. I'm Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Can you stop this for a second?
Clinical psychologist.
So right there, you ask, like, is this Christians versus atheists kind of thing? Apparently that was the original title for this video, which is why he asked that. So all the people in the room thinks that's the name of the video, and they changed it later to Jordan Peterson versus, what is it, 20 atheists or something like that?
Yeah. But, like, he is a Christian. Why does he try and hide that?
But he, like, doesn't want to call himself one sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah, he's never wanted to call himself one, which is weird.
Yeah.
But, like, what he does is Christian philosophy.
Yep.
Like, since the very beginning of his
Christian philosophy.
Yeah. Well, it's Christian philosophy, which is bad philosophy. Yeah.
Christian philosophy, which is basically God did it. So
Yep.
there you go.
Yeah, but like since the beginning, he's always been like this little coy boy.
Yep.
Ooh, I don't want to say I'm Christian, but like it's so obvious the dude is Christian.
Yeah.
Psychologist, a professor emeritus at the University of Toronto, an author, a podcaster, public speaker, and today I'm surrounded by 25 atheists.
25.
My first claim,
So many
atheists reject God, but they don't.
Incorrect.
Yeah.
Atheists don't believe in God.
Correct.
Atheists fail
They
to
generally
accept God.
Yeah. And they generally have a better understanding of what God is than a lot of theists.
Yeah. So there is a difference between failing to accept something and rejecting it.
Yeah.
I reject the Christian God because I don't think that it is possible for the Christian God to exist. So I would say that I reject the Christian God. I do not reject God in general.
Okay.
Because like it might be that a God exists,
Yeah.
but I have no evidence to believe that a God exists. So I don't accept that. That's different than rejecting it. Again, it's kind of like, when people say like atheists believe God doesn't exist. Incorrect.
Right.
I am an atheist. I do not believe God does not exist.
Correct. Right.
Just like I do not believe that God does exist. I believe neither of those things. I have no evidence to support either of those things. So I do not believe either of those. I do believe that the Christian God doesn't exist. So I will go as far to say that about specifically the Christian God.
Is there enough evidence that the Christian God does not exist?
Well, I just think that the Christian God is logically impossible.
Right. Right.
The world would not exist as it is if the Christian God existed. I think that the world as it is incompatible with a Christian God, with the Christian God, as he is portrayed in the Bible.
Don't understand what they're rejecting.
Good afternoon, Dr. Peterson.
How are you doing?
So this claim here that atheists don't know what they're rejecting.
What was that?
It's a weird setup that they just have like a countdown and everybody just rushes to the chair.
Right? And whoever touches the chair first.
Yeah.
Like musical chairs for atheists.
They have 25 of them, so I assume like a bunch of them are not going to be able to talk to him.
Yep. For sure.
Rejecting. My background is in studying to become a traditional Catholic priest, daily mass, daily rosary, going on long retreats, deep into the magisterium and biblical hermeneutics. Like I was thoroughly in it. And it seems like I do know what I'm missing. Is there something that I missed over years of study, both this issue formally and living out religion so deeply?
Well, you obviously feel that you missed something when you were practicing for the priesthood. Your aim was off then. So there's always the possibility that it's still off now.
What was off about my aim in the first place?
I don't know. That might take a long time to figure out. But
Then it seems kind of like this no true Scotsman type of fallacy in which you're the arbiter of people's aims and how they understand those aims to be. How is it that you can claim that people don't know something that you know about their life despite not having met them?
well, it's obviously a generic claim, just like the atheist claim that there's no God is a generic claim.
Oh, hold on. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Atheists claim there's no God? Most atheists I know don't claim there's no God.
Yep.
Again,
I mean,
this
there are
is
a few what are called like hard atheists that specifically claim there is no God. No God.
Yeah.
But that is not
Gnostic atheist.
all atheists.
Yeah. Like, again, I claim that there is no Christian God, and I'll back that up with evidence.
Yeah.
Look at the Bible. The Bible describes the Christian God as creating the earth and all the plants and everything before the sun. That's not how it happened. There you go. The claims of the Bible's actions of the Christian God are incorrect.
Right.
So if you define the Christian God as the God who performed the actions in the Bible, then I don't believe in that God.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could define the Christian God in a way that I would say, well, I don't believe that that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So, probably a lot of modern Christians would define a God in that way. I just don't consider that to be the canonical Christian God. So that's not my claim. My claim is that the God of the Bible does not exist.
Yeah.
But in general, atheists don't claim that God doesn't exist. Like just God as a concept, as a being. Not a specific God, but just God.
In your case, it would have to be specified more, and I'm not claiming to understand what was going on in your mind, but my experience with atheists is twofold. Is that they have a very reductive notion of what constitutes God, let's say in the Judeo-Christian tradition, and they've often been hurt by...
I mean, again, I just went over, I am an atheist, and I just went over, like, this is the specific God that I believe does not exist. You can define God in other ways that I won't say I believe that thing doesn't exist. But as Jordan Peterson just said, we're super reductive. Like, yeah, when we're claiming that a specific God doesn't exist, we have to be reductive.
Yeah.
It's like, I believe that Jupiter exists, but I don't believe that every possible planet exists.
Yeah, I should probably point out that you meant Jupiter the planet, not the God.
Okay. True, yes. I believe that the planet Jupiter exists, but I don't believe that, like, every single possible planet that, like, could exist does exist.
Yeah.
So, yeah, of course, you have to be reductive when you're talking about specific claims.
Yeah.
So in a non-reductive sense, I don't disbelieve every single possible God. So he's just incorrect. Or I don't believe that every single possible God doesn't exist. So he's just wrong here.
Yeah.
by someone who was religious or by the religious enterprise or perhaps by God himself, so to speak, and that's left them with an animus.
But I think that you have a reductive view of what atheism is. You've defined religion so broadly to include any sort of having aim in life, any sort of cultural archetypes, or having a metaphorical substrate. And atheism to you is a very specific type of like three people in the world that are these Raskolnikov type of, they want to get away with a perfect murder. It seems like you have the reductive view of what an atheist is.
Well, let's start with your claim. How do you define the God that you're rejecting? Like, what is God to you? You studied in the church, you found that unsatisfactory. How would you characterize what you rejected?
I think the average Christian believer, when they say that they're Christian and they believe, they mean some sort of God that is all-powerful, all-perfect, is somehow involved in the matters of this world, and that we look to them through wisdom and with the Logos incarnate in Christ. And it also seems like you don't believe in religion in the way that the average Christian says that they believe in religion. And there are as many gods out there as there are believers, because everybody has mutually exclusive and different views of what God is. So it seems
Well,
like...
if everybody had mutually exclusive views of what God is, no one could speak to each other.
Incorrect.
Yeah, you can speak to each other.
Yeah.
It's kind of silly. Even if we have different ideas of what God is specifically,
Yeah.
But
I this may come as a surprise to Jordan Peterson, but Christians and Muslims do, in fact, speak to each other.
yes,
Fucking shocking, right? Yeah.
amazing.
Crazy that happens in this world.
He even talked
Absolutely
to like
crazy.
Buddhists and Hindus and
Yeah.
yeah.
So certainly, clearly, very obviously, people with mutually exclusive beliefs of God can talk to each other. So the fact that two Christians could have mutually exclusive views of God and still talk to each other is not surprising at all. So again, Jordan Peterson's second claim in this video, also wrong.
Yep.
The mere fact of communication presumes a commonality of assumption and definition.
No, it doesn't. What? What? No. We have to agree on what God is in order to talk to each other? False.
No.
Completely false. 100% incorrect.
Right.
Absolutely 100% incorrect. We don't even have to agree on most definitions of words to talk to each other. There will be a lot of miscommunications, but we can still talk to each other. Hell, we barely have to speak the same language to talk to each other. I can communicate with someone who barely speaks English. We won't have the most in-depth conversation, but I can still communicate with them.
Yep.
Admittedly, if someone speaks zero English at all, then it would probably be hard for me to talk to them.
Yeah.
Certainly without a translator, yes, it would be hard. But again, we don't need to fully agree on what God is in order to just talk to each other. That's insane. That is an insane claim.
And it's certainly not the case that I regard any archetypal manifestation whatsoever as equally religious. So that's not a real claim. Let me give you an example. For example, there's a sub-narrative in the story of Moses where Moses is rewarded with a glimpse of God. Okay, and that's one of the ways that God is characterized in the Old Testament stories.
Yes.
Now, Moses is a faithful servant of God and a good man. At least that's the case within the...
You talking about the burning bush?
I don't know.
I thought the burning bush was specifically because he couldn't see God's face. So God appeared to him as a burning bush, which is weird because in the story of Adam and Eve, God does appear, God's actual face appears to Adam and Eve. And a lot of people claim God's face would be too awe-inspiring. We can't see it or our brains would explode. And it's well, why didn't Adam and Eve's brains explode? God actually physically appeared to them.
Yeah, and why didn't Moses put out the burning bush before it spread the fire and burned?
Oh God, this bush is on fire. He just douses it. God's ah! You've killed me. You've killed God. Moses is oh no, I'm so sorry. He's trying to light it, and he's got flint and steel. I don't know. Did they have flint and steel back then? He's got two sticks. He's rubbing them together. Come on, please.
That's right.
I got to revive God.
The confines of the story.
One possible interpretation.
It's the case within the confines of the story, obviously.
Not obviously. When we look at the Bible can't precisely say anything because there are so many different exegetical and hermeneutic views of this particular book, and that everybody has everybody has disagreed historically on, it seems even the most benign detail about a book this big. And it seems you can only say that the Bible says something if you first presuppose that it's univocal.
So your claim essentially is that Moses in the Old Testament plays the role of a villain or is irrelevant? Because the Old...
What? When did he claim that?
I don't know.
How the fuck did Jordan Peterson get that from what he just said? What?
The guy opposite Jordan Peterson is basically arguing that there's a bunch of different interpretations.
Yeah.
Everybody interprets it different.
Yeah, not everyone agrees on exactly what the story of Moses is, which is perfectly reasonable.
Yeah. Jordan Peterson jumps to the conclusion that he assumes Moses is the villain. What?
Yeah. No, he's just saying that it's possible for someone to think that.
Yeah.
Which is entirely reasonable.
Yep.
How is that unreasonable?
Alternative claim
I'm
is
saying
that
that we
he's
can't
good.
know. Because
Well,
we
that's-
can't talk to those
look,
authors.
If you are going to start with the presupposition that there's nothing I can say about any of these stories that you're not going to disagree with from the perspective that there are multiple.
Again, that's not what he said.
Yeah.
He just said there are multiple interpretations. You can't say that this is canonically what the Bible means.
Yeah.
You know, especially when it's something like, oh, there's a sub-narrative in the story of Moses where he gets a glimpse of God. Like, no. There are some things that, like, are kind of inarguable, right? There are some claims in the Bible that are, like, very hard claims where it's like, yeah, the Bible says exactly this took place. So it's hard to say, like, well, no, the Bible isn't saying that there was a man named Moses. You could interpret that as there being a woman named Fish Guts. Like,
Yeah.
no, the Bible's pretty clear that it's a man, and it's, like, pretty clear also on his name and his role in this story. You know, not his, like, narratives or whatever, but his role in the story as the main character of the story of Moses.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly in terms of, like, the little details or, like, the sub narratives, as Jordan Peterson puts them, those are arguable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Multiple potential competing claims, then I can't speak with you. So
And
you
we
have
also have a short time here, so I want to get to the core of what you're arguing here, and I'd love if we could.
the core of what I'm arguing is that atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. So I'm trying to
Yes.
give you an example of what's being rejected and its complexity. Okay, so
what the flag means.
God rewards Moses with a
The flag is if a certain number of people hold up the red flag, then the person sitting in the chair has to give up the chair to someone else.
Okay.
I think it's half. If 50% of people raise their flag, I think.
glimpse of the divine. So this is a definition of the God that atheists are hypothetically rejecting.
Apostle 1.
I said
Yeah.
I didn't say the. I
know.
said ah.
Now
That
Dwight,
is
you're just
possible,
getting
yeah.
mad for no
Okay.
reason.
He agrees with you. Okay.
Yeah.
I said, how dare you agree with me?
Okay. So despite the fact that Moses is a stellar character and he's had a long and difficult life and can withstand a lot of difficulty and travail, God puts him between two cliffs. So he can just see a crack of what's in front of him. And when God walks by, he allows him to see his back. Okay, so the implication
Okay. This is part of the story that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah. I
So
don't
it's
know
not
that
the
story
burning
at all.
bush. He's
No.
he's allowed to.
Apparently, his back crack. You get to see the back crack of God or something. I don't know. Is that
Yep.
what he said?
You get to see God's back knee.
and implication of that story is that the divine is fundamentally unknowable. It's a pinnacle experience, and that
I mean, that's if you want to take that as an implication. I don't, because like
Yeah.
earlier in the Bible, God clearly shows his physical form to Adam and Eve.
Right.
Like that's how I interpret the book of Genesis. You know, the first two chapters, books, whatever you call them. You know, the ones that go over the story of creation. That's how I interpreted that when I read it. It's God physically appearing, his physical form appearing in front of Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
So no, I would not say that the implication is that God is fundamentally unknowable, or God's form, maybe, I don't know. Certainly, like, sure, you can't know all of God because God is like in whatever, sure.
Yeah.
I guess we can agree on that. Still doesn't mean that I don't understand what I'm choosing to not believe.
Yeah.
Like, can I just define anything as infinite and then say, like, well, if you choose to not believe it, you just don't understand what you're choosing to not believe?
Yeah.
I have an infinite cheese grater. You don't believe in my infinite cheese grater. You just don't understand because it's infinite. You're just a
Right.
you're just a finite-minded monkey man that doesn't understand my infinite cheese grater.
The cheese grater is unknowable, man.
Unknowable. You can't know the infinity of the cheese grater.
Yeah.
Like there's no block of cheese big enough that if you slide it down the cheese grater, it will not grate the entire cheese block.
Yeah.
Unless I guess you had an infinite cheese block, then yeah, you could just grate infinitely.
Is there a block of cheese such that the infinite cheese grater could not grate?
Can the infinite cheese grater create a block of cheese so big that even it could not grate it?
Right.
People in their finitude have to
we
be
got a new
shielded
t-shirt.
from a
I think we have a new T-shirt.
Oh, I absolutely would make that T-shirt. It's just a Mobius strip cheese grater. The Mobius cheese grater. That's God right there. That is God. Yeah. The infinite cheese grater.
That's right.
comprehensive vision of the basis of reality. Well, that's not the God that's defined in that manner, right? It's not a simple personification. It's not a simple old man in the sky. It's something that in its essence is unknowable and overwhelming. And that isn't.
Oh, the little flag graphic in the bottom left is how many flags are up, apparently.
Okay. But so Jordan is saying this as if this is the only possible interpretation of the Bible. And again, I would just go back to the story of creation where God physically appears to Adam and Eve and their brains don't explode. They're like fine with it. They're like, "What's up, God? How's it going?" And God's like, "Hey, see that tree?
Yeah.
Don't eat from that tree." And then later, after they've eaten from the tree, God comes down to the garden and he's like wandering around. Adam, where the fuck are you guys? Eve? Adam? I left you guys right here. How far could you possibly have gone? Which is funny because God is supposed to know everything, but in this story, he's just like, "Where'd you guys go? Hello?"
In my experience, the God that's defined by atheists who are attempting to undermine the story. I mean, it's the same claim.
No, we don't define God.
Right.
That's up to you guys. You guys are the God believers. We just haven't yet met a God definition that we believe in.
Pretty much,
if you can come up with one, good on ya. But so far, everyone, not convincing.
Yep.
For example, that you're a finite creature and that you face something that in the final analysis is unknowable.
To be clear, though, I might actually choose to worship an infinite cheese grater. Not the Mobius strip cheese grater, but like one that was actually like, a normal cheese grater, but that extended into infinity. I might actually worship that because that's really amazing.
Yeah.
If that existed, I might worship it. But again, there's no evidence of the infinite cheese grater, so I don't believe in the infinite cheese.
Okay.
And that you have to establish a relationship with it regardless of your inability to perceive or even withstand perceiving the whole. Okay, is there a problem with that?
I mean, the problem is that when we look at, famously, when you've been asked, do you believe in God? The question becomes, what do we mean by God? And in the Bible, it's not even clear the biblical authors know what God is because Yahweh has historically emerged from an early storm god, a deity that doesn't exhaust the category of deity, and that has changed over the Old Testament. Does God have physicality? Does God not have physicality?
Yeah, one of the pretty clear indicators that God is not the only God in the early version of the Christian God is, again, in the story of creation. When God now realizes, oh no, they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, I better get them out of this garden before they eat from the tree of infinite life and become like us. Like the gods.
Right.
Yeah. So in the earliest version of the Christian God, he was just one of a pantheon of gods.
Yeah.
He was the Jewish God who existed alongside all the other gods. Their belief of how these gods work. And later, only later, did he become, the one and only God, the view of the people who believe.
Yeah. But is that the royal we or godly we, I guess, in that case?
No, because he said like the gods.
Oh, okay.
I mean, depending on which translation, the translations have different, different ways of saying it. But in the original text, it was pretty clear that he was talking about they can't eat from the tree of eternal life, or they will become like the gods.
Yeah.
Which apparently all it takes to be like the gods is knowing the difference between good and evil and living forever. So, two things to be like God, according to the book of Genesis 1 or 2 or whatever. Anyway, two things to be like God. So, by that definition of God, what's that one jellyfish that can't die? The Hydra?
Sure.
That's got one already. That's almost God.
Yeah.
I doubt that a jellyfish understands good and evil, but it could maybe one day. I don't think so.
I don't think jellyfish have a brain.
Yeah. So it's got one. Just
right.
Got half the God requirements.
Yep.
It seems like, yes, if you define religion to mean anybody that has an aim, anybody that looks at the unknown, anybody who wants to go from chaos to order is inherently religious, then yes. But also in the same way, I could define atheist as somebody who doesn't dogmatically believe in a religion, or somebody who doesn't regularly attend religious services or belong to a denomination. To help especially the audience kind of boil this down, there was a lot of words there. That the central claim is that we exist somewhere between the finite and the infinite.
A central claim.
A central claim is that we exist somewhere between the finite.
Why does he pronounce it that way? A central claim. No one says a central claim. It's A.
Don't know. He is Canadian, right?
Do Canadians say a central claim? No.
I guess so.
I don't believe that.
I don't know what that's about.
I think he's just trying to sound pretentious.
Probably.
He always tries to sound pretentious.
Yes, he does.
Yep. It is noon. Did you need to head out, or can you stay a little bit?
I can stay a little bit, but yeah, I don't want to.
Okay,
take too much longer.
just let me know when you need to head out, and we'll stop there.
Finite and the infinite?
No,
Is that-
I said that we were finite and we had to establish a relationship with the infinite.
Yeah, then in that case, then we're all religious, but then I can do the same.
I mean, if I could, I would have a relationship with the infinite cheese grater. I would grate my cheese with it.
Right?
All of my cheese. Because it would never be unable to grate a block of cheese that I had.
Yeah.
All
And just be your mouth under it in such a way that it just grates straight into your mouth. Yeah.
I'd have to run across it.
Yeah.
I'm picturing this thing as floating above the earth,
Okay.
7 feet above the surface of.
If you just make a circle out of the cheese grater, that's an infinite cheese grater.
No, it's a
Just a circle.
finite cheese grater that restarts. Just like the Mobius strip cheese grater. It's still finite.
A Mobius cheese grater wouldn't work because you flip the way the grating goes. So it's just a circle.
Okay, but yeah, even a circle,
Or just
a
a strip.
circular
Sort of
cheese
strip.
grater, it's not infinite. It's finite, but it turns back on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I
Just
go
keep
like
going
this, I
around
didn't
infinity.
create infinity. I just created a circle.
Okay.
What I'm talking about, an infinite cheese grater, is a flat cheese grater that is infinitely long.
Right.
And in that regard, I guess it couldn't float 7 feet above the surface of the earth because it would extend off, it would be tangentially, extend in a tangent out into space infinitely.
And it would have so much gravity at that point that it would just suck the whole earth into itself.
It would probably be a black hole. An infinite cheese grater would collapse into a black hole.
Yep.
Well, I don't know, because the gravity, like, it's not big enough in any one area that it would have that much gravity. It wouldn't be structurally sound for sure. It would fall apart.
Yeah.
But if we're considering it to be made out of a material that is infinitely strong, then I guess it could hold
frozen.
its structure. You're not frozen to me.
Oh, it's coming back.
But yeah, the infinite cheese grater would have to have infinite strength, so it wouldn't collapse into a black hole.
Yeah. But it's okay because it's a god, so it can do that.
Yeah.
It has those powers.
Yeah, it chooses its own form.
Right.
I assume. We can't know because it's infinite.
Right.
So we can't reject it because we don't know
it's
it.
unknowable.
Same thing and define one.
It's about to get rejected based on the red flags.
Uh-oh. Yeah, he is.
One particular element of atheism. It seems like we both have a reductive view of what the other side looks like, to the point where a conversation seems incoherent, and not just incoherent, but not in the way that the average Christian understands Christianity to be.
Do you have a
Okay,
problem?
let's pause there. Sorry, you've been voted out by
Awesome.
the majority.
I mean, good job. That was pretty good.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you,
David.
too. David, good to see you.
Tell me everything that you know about the Polynesian deity Lono,
Hold on.
L-O-N-O.
I didn't catch that, but all the people behind Jordan Peterson are at a great disadvantage to getting to the chair.
Yep. Yeah, they need to run further because the chair is not central all of their seating.
Yeah, they have to go around the table to get to it.
They put all the athletes on that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, this is a good question. Tell me everything you know about the Polynesian deity Lono, I think it was. Yeah. How can you reject Lono if you don't understand Lono?
That's right.
I see exactly where he's going with this, and I love it.
Yep.
Good job.
I don't know anything about the Polynesian deity Lono.
So you're rejecting something without knowledge of what you're rejecting.
I'm not.
Hey, Avabab, how's it going? Thanks for joining us. We're watching Jordan Peterson versus... So the title says 20 atheists, but the title in the beginning of this video said 25 atheists.
Yeah.
So we don't exactly know how many atheists there are, but there are many atheists versus one Jordan Peterson. Yeah, it's kind of like the 100 guys versus one gorilla.
Right.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson's the gorilla?
Just finished your breakfast. Very nice. Pancakes with mini chocolate chips.
Oh, I want those pancakes.
I had wifey waffles for breakfast. My wife made me waffles. Absolutely lovely.
Rejecting it.
Do
No
you
more
be-
than I'm
do
rejecting
you believe in
anything
Lono?
that I don't know anything
Do you
about.
believe in Lono?
I
Do you
fail to
believe
see
that
the
he is a
relevance of
deity
that.
that exists in the world, exists in the universe, that exists in the existence of everything? Do you believe that Lono
I'll
is
answer
a...
that.
100 guys versus a dead gorilla. The gorilla's already defeated.
Yeah.
What about 100 dead guys versus a dead gorilla? Who wins in that case?
Question once you answer my question, which is, do I reject everything that I'm ignorant of? Because that's your presupposition that undergirds your argument, and unless you can prove that that's valid, then there's no point.
I mean, he's not ignorant of Lono now, right? He knows that Lono is a thing. So
Right. So he's
Answer the
saying
question,
like, oh, you
Jordan.
can't know my mind and whether or not I reject everything I don't know about. But that's exactly what he was saying about atheists.
Mm-hmm. Now you know about Lono. Do you accept Lono? No? Then you're rejecting something that you don't fully understand. Boom.
Yep.
Case closed.
My question is quite simple.
Yeah, but that doesn't
Do
mean
you
it's
believe-
formulated accurately.
Do you believe
Oh, it very much is, Jordan. I'm
Yes, it is.
so sorry that you feel so personally attacked that you've been proven wrong.
that Lono exists? Yes or no?
I'm not going to answer that question for the reasons I just described. You already insisted that if I reject something, that if I'm ignorant of something, I reject it. Do you think that everyone in the world...
I mean, he's refusing to answer whether he rejects it or not because he knows that as soon as he does answer that question, it proves him wrong. And he doesn't want to get proven wrong, so he's throwing a tantrum.
Yeah.
World has to
I'm surprised the atheist isn't pointing that out, but maybe he will get to it.
Yeah.
know everything simultaneously for that to be valid and true?
I think in order for your
Answer that
argument
question.
to be true, in order for it to be true that we atheists don't understand what we're rejecting, then you need to also apply that to yourself and to Christians and to Muslims and to any other person on this earth where if you don't understand what you're rejecting the belief in, then you can't reject the belief in it. That's the implication of your claim.
I didn't say that I rejected the belief in Lona. I said I didn't know who Lona was. I didn't say anything about rejecting.
That's because I've asked you several times and you haven't. But let me get to my even greater point.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying atheists don't understand what religion is or what God is in order to be able to reject it fully or completely. We have someone over here who studied it in their own way. I've studied religion. I have a degree in religious studies, specialty in Christianity and Mediterranean traditions. And further than that, beyond me, Pew Research studies suggest that atheists and agnostics actually know more about religion and about religious stories, the foundational principles, than believers.
That's
Almost. Hasidic Jews know the most. And then it's atheists right underneath them.
Damn Hasidic Jews, we'll get you.
All right. We're so close. We just need to know a little bit more about religion. But yeah, certainly with regard to Christians, atheists in general know more about religion than Christians.
Yeah.
Know more about their own religion, about Christianity, than Christian. Not always. Like, certainly there are some atheists who don't know about Christianity, don't know much. But, in the United States, by default, you're raised Christian, right? Most people are raised Christian. Didn't say by default. In general, most people in the United States are raised Christian. So if they just don't think about it, they're going to be Christian. So you kind of have to, learn and think and stuff in order to reject it. You have to understand it. So kind of the exact opposite of what Jordan Peterson is saying here is reality. Yeah. Of course, usually the exact opposite of what Jordan Peterson is saying is reality. So, par for the course.
Yeah. Because they're more religious than they think they are.
Okay. You can...
They're concerned with deep matters, and one of the defining characteristics of someone who's oriented in a religious direction is that they're concerned with deep matters.
Okay.
In fact, it's virtually definitional.
Right, but they also have to identify with a religious tradition and accept the foundational stories that go along with that.
Well, that would mean more that they're sectarian than that they're religious. And most people, for example, in the United States, deny that they're religious but accept that they're spiritual.
Let's pause there. You've been voted out by the majority.
Dang, I like that guy.
I don't know why he
was
was voted
so
out
good.
so early.
Yeah, his point was so good. And Jordan Peterson just refused to answer because, I'm sure what Jordan Peterson was thinking is, oh no, I'm trapped. If I answered this question honestly, it shows that my entire premise is bullshit.
Yep.
I must not answer this question honestly. So he just refused to answer. He threw a tantrum. That's like the equivalent of, when a 2-year-old is like, why do I have to go to bed? And you say, because you have to wake up tomorrow. They're like, well, shit. That answered my question, so I'm just going to cry.
Yeah.
Aha!
One of the athletes. He made it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love his shirt. I'm thrilled to be here. That's awesome.
Hi, nice to meet you.
How are you doing?
Good, how
What's
are you?
your name?
I'm Greg. Nice to meet you.
Greg.
Okay, so I feel like you're getting at this idea of polysemy, where we have multiple related meanings for a word, right? Like, for example, a famous painting can be emotionally moving in that it changes my emotional state. And when I was on the highway coming here to the studio, I was physically moving. I was changing my position. If I said, I believe the Mona Lisa is very moving, and you said, you don't really understand what you're saying. It's nailed to the wall. I would say that you're the one who doesn't understand what I'm saying, not the other way around. And the way that relates to this is there are many concepts of God, and I'll admit, I find a lot of what you say about that interesting. I'm familiar with it. The idea of this kind of Jungian hierarchical thing, or as a metaphor or a symbol, or the kind of, atheist, materialist, literalist idea of a agentic, omnipotent, omniscient being that intervenes in reality, right? So when I'm saying that I reject the concept of God, I'm aware of these other definitions of God, but I think that when we use words, we tend to only imply one meaning at a time. So the same way that I would say the Mona Lisa is moving emotionally, but I would not say it's moving physically. I would say I reject the concept of God in this very literal way. But
What literal way?
the way that God is this omniscient, omnipotent, agentic, supernatural being that sent his son down and has, caused miracles and all these things like that. The idea of God is
Do you think that there's an underlying unity of things?
could you,
What the fuck? What a stupid question.
Yeah.
The guy just made a point so eloquently and well to Jordan Peterson, and Jordan Peterson just asks him something designed to derail the conversation.
Yep.
Something
That's exactly what he did.
incredibly stupid and obtuse just to throw the guy off.
Yep. Yeah.
explain that question?
Well, scientists, for example, believe that science unifies in a comprehensive theory. Do you, yes, no, or that there are multiple?
That's exactly true either.
Again, like what the guy just said, he's using words in different ways.
Yeah.
Like the unity of everything. Do you like scientists think that science unifies things? Those words mean, that same word means something different in those contexts.
And
So
he's also presuming to know the thoughts of all scientists.
divining someone's thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
like,
think he's probably quoting somebody specific, like a specific scientist, but attributing it to all scientists.
like I would agree that science unifies things in that it gives explanations for things that appear disparate. That,
Okay. Yeah.
you know, the same underlying explanation explains both things. Like lightning, to me, looks like a very different thing than the light coming out of a light bulb, right?
Right.
They look like very different things. But electricity explains both of them in the same, like the fact that they are both the same thing, ultimately. The electricity
specifically were
flowing
talking
through a
about the
light
light-
bulb.
Light coming from a light bulb, which is different from electricity. But
Sure,
light
but they're
is-
caused by they're caused by the same thing. They're caused by a difference in voltage.
Yeah.
That's what they're caused by, even though they look like extremely different things.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
They sound very different.
Yeah, for sure.
Competing truths. Those are the options. Either things unify or there are multiple competing truths.
I think that I know that, for example, like in physics, people are looking for like a theory of everything.
And why do you think they're doing that?
What's that?
Was that a false dichotomy that they either unify or they're competing?
I think so. I didn't really understand what he said because he said it so poorly.
Yeah.
I could back up and see if I can divine his intent.
Options. Either things unify or there are multiple competing truths.
I think that I know that
Either things unify or there are multiple competing truths.
So he's kind of saying that there's these different truths. They should either unify into one truth, become basically one truth, whatever that means, or they're competing. There's a bunch of different truths competing with each other.
I mean, I think that he and I would both agree that truth is one thing. But I think he and I would probably differ in our idea of the best way to pursue that truth.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like for him, it's probably like divine inspiration. Maybe. I don't know. I don't want to put words in the guy's mouth. I don't think he's ever said that, but I think, based on how he's talked about the Bible, I think his idea of divine inspiration is that it does lead to truth. Whereas I would disagree. I don't think divine inspiration ever leads to truth.
Yeah.
I don't think it's let me rephrase that. I don't think it's an accurate method of arriving at truth.
Yeah.
I think the scientific method is much more accurate. Obviously, humans are infallible. Humans are fallible. So
we're infallible.
yeah, obviously humans are fallible. So there is no perfect way to get at truth. But I think that science is a much more reliable method at arriving at truth than divine inspiration.
Yeah.
But again, I think Jordan Peterson is just trying to throw this guy off because he came in with a fantastic point. And Jordan Peterson's like, I don't want to talk about that because it shows how stupid I am. So instead, I'm just going to talk about something else.
Yeah.
But for example, like in physics, people are looking for like a theory of everything.
And why do you think they're doing that?
It's interesting. It's helpful.
Why can't
Again,
Jordan
it's
Peterson
question
just
designed to just throw him off?
Yeah, why can't Jordan Peterson just talk about what the guy said? The guy came in with such a salient point. Jordan is just like, nope, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about that because it shows that I'm stupid. So instead, I'm just going to throw a tantrum again.
Yep.
But they also believe that there's an underlying unity to things.
In a sense, yeah. Like, like the material world and time and space are probably governed by universal laws and principles.
And what's funny is the guy's point about, using the same word in these different contexts and kind of like muddling their meaning is exactly what Jordan Peterson is doing right here when he's using the term unify or unity.
Yeah.
Principles?
Partly that, yes, but that the same thing might extend to a broader domain that would include imagination and value.
Could you help me connect that to the prompt?
Well, I'm trying to define God, the God that I don't think atheists do a very good job of defining. Here's another question for you. What do you think guides you in your determination of whether or not what you're saying to me is true?
I mean, he says that he's trying to define God, but he never tries to define God.
Yeah.
I don't think once he's ever intentionally tried to define God. It's not that I've ever seen.
He, in this case, is kind of dancing around the definition, I guess.
Yeah. So if he would like to define God, like, please, I'm all ears. Literally, I've got 4 of them right.
Can we go back? Can we stay on what we were talking about?
We are.
Okay.
You're just uncomfortable.
No, you're not, Jordan. You have completely changed the subject.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, this guy is insufferable.
With the question.
No, I feel like you're just kind of throwing different spaghetti at the wall.
I'm not.
Okay.
I asked
All
you a
right.
very specific question.
No, he really is. He's just...
Yeah.
The guy sat down and said, look, when you use the word God, you are conflating multiple definitions of the word God. Let's all agree on one definition that I say I reject. And Jordan was like, nope, we're going to talk about something else.
Nope. Yep.
No, I don't like that because it shows how stupid my point is. So we're going to talk about something else.
Yeah.
Question. What is it that you think God...
And now the guy's like, hey, can we like try and stay on subject? I came in with like a real good point here and you just kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall, as he put it, to see what sticks.
Yep.
And Jordan's like, no, that's not what I'm doing. That is not what I'm doing. I am not crying and flailing my arms. You believe that I'm crying and flailing my arms, but I am not. Wah.
Right.
guides you when you're talking to me to help you determine whether what you say is true?
Logic, memory, reasoning, sensory information.
How do you distinguish that from being governed by something that's false?
An interesting question.
How do you know the difference when you speak?
Is it? I think it's a really stupid question.
I think it's like one of those deepity kind of things that are supposed to sound deep and meaningful, but you scratch the surface, really isn't.
Yeah. How do you determine what's true? Well, through logic and reasoning and sensory information. Well, how do you know that that's not false?
Through the same thing.
Logic and reasoning and sensory information. Just the opposite of what I just described as true. That's how I determine what's false.
Yep.
Well, how do you know you're not being tricked? I don't.
Yeah.
Between what's true and what's false. So you could imagine.
Infer, right? I can infer.
From what principles?
So, and what?
Reality. Whatever agrees with reality. I mean, obviously, I can't know I'm not a brain in a jar. Yeah, sure. Whatever.
Right.
We'll go back to like the philosophy of like the trickster gods. Sure. But like, does that matter? I mean, when you're talking to someone, like, does it matter whether they like truly actually exist in the most fundamental way of like nature, or whether they're like just a figment of your imagination because you're a brain in the jar? No, it doesn't matter. They're like there. You're talking to them in this whatever construct you like to think it is. Let's both agree that this is reality. Can we just do that? Can we just agree that like this place and time right here, our interaction is reality? And Jordan Peterson just fucking can't.
Yeah.
Like, no, we can't agree because that shows that I'm stupid. So instead, let's like go down this rabbit hole of like where like, you know, we can't even agree on what reality is because I don't want to define God.
Yep.
What are you getting at?
I'm getting at the fact that your conscience guides you. Is that reasonable?
Conscious is defined by
Conscience.
my empathy.
Hey, but like his point was you're using the word God in multiple ways. Like, why does this matter?
Yeah.
Like, do you want to address his point, Jordan? No, you don't, because it makes you look like a fool.
Yep.
Empathy and my reason are my foundational.
Define it any way you want.
Okay, so that's how I'm defining my conscience. Is my, my conscience is my sense of,
Right
and wrong. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
does that come from?
I would say that comes from an evolved capacity.
Nice. Yes. I love this guy. He's great. I love this guy. You are awesome. I love your shirt. I love everything about you. You're awesome.
To empathize and a recognition of the benefits of engaging with and nurturing that capacity. And then that empathy is constrained and guided by reason, right? Like, for example, I am driving down the highway.
But again, like Jordan is so good at this. He's like, the guy came in with such a good point that shows that Jordan Peterson is being obtuse and his point is wrong. And Jordan's like, nope, we're going to go off on this tangent and talk about something else because I don't want you showing that I'm wrong. He did the exact same thing to the last guy. The first guy, not so much. But these last two guys, Jordan is like, nope, we can't talk about that because it shows that I'm wrong. Instead, I'm going to change the conversation and we're going to talk about what I want.
The kitten in the road, I'm going to empathetically feel, oh my God, I want to save the kitten, but then reasonably, like I'm going to get hit by a car, right? So that's sort of the process through which I make ethical decisions.
Okay,
is
how do
empathy
you
constrained by reason?
Do you think that people can differ in their response to something?
Well, like, why does this fucking matter? What is Jordan Peterson's problem? Why can't he just? Well, I know why. It's because he doesn't want to look like a fool, so he has to change the subject. Whenever someone's like, "Here's why you look like a fool," like, no. I must change the subject.
Something empathically?
Yeah.
Is there a mediating principle that can tell you one person who's empathic and another person who's empathic that disagree, who's correct?
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we'd have to, talk it out, right? Mm-hmm. We do that in real life all the time when we have, whether that's a discussion with a friend about the right thing to do in a situation, whether that's a policy discussion about law, right? That's where we can converse with each other, think about things, explain our perspectives, and then kind of reach a conclusion, right? That I think that we do that all the time.
So Elijah, the prophet Elijah, defined God in the Old Testament as the voice of conscience within.
Okay.
That's a definition.
So you're saying by that definition.
Well, he didn't. He said, this is a definition of God that appears in the Bible.
Oh, okay.
Like, sure, then I believe in God. Cool.
You believe in consciousness, so
God is my
Believe in
iPhone. Oh my.
there you go.
I believe in God now. No longer an atheist. If you define God in a really stupid way that no one agrees with, sure, I believe in God. Good job, Jordan.
Right.
Absolute fucking paragon of thought right here.
Yeah. It's 30 minutes after, so I think I'm going to head off.
Okay, well, we can stop it here with that absolutely ridiculous definition of God.
Good.
That was Jordan Peterson pretending to be an intellectual. That was not the most insufferable I've ever seen Jordan Peterson, but it's up there. Boy.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been Self Redacted, and earlier it was Self Uncensored. And thank you for joining us. I don't have any outro music, but I do have an outro card, so I'm going to put that up. Thank you for joining me, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next week.